Welcome to another episode of Audiobook Labs. I'm Tony, and if you've ever watched one of those motivational videos that tells you to keep your goals secret, that silence is power, and that speaking your dreams out loud will somehow jinx them, well, today we're going to take a deeper, more grounded look at what's really happening here. Because here's the thing, I once thought reading 12 self-help books in a weekend would fix me. Mostly, it just gave me back pain and mild existential dread. And somewhere in that pile of wisdom was this recurring message about keeping quiet, staying silent, letting your actions speak. It sounded profound. It sounded mysterious. But when I actually tried to live by it, something felt off. What if I told you that the whole keep your mouth shut philosophy might actually be keeping you stuck? Not because silence is wrong, but because it's incomplete. Today, we're diving into a real case study, not my case, not some guru's case, but a structured, evidence-based approach called the Strategic Sharing Framework. And by the end of our time together, you'll understand exactly when to share, when to stay quiet, and most importantly, why the people telling you to stay silent might be missing half the story. Let me start with Sarah's story. Sarah is 43, a project manager who'd been dreaming of starting a consulting business for 3 years. 3 years. She'd done the research, saved some money, even had a few potential clients lined up. But every time someone asked about her plans, she'd deflect. Oh, just exploring some ideas, she'd say. Why? Because she'd internalized this message that sharing would somehow diminish her power, that speaking her goal out loud would curse it. Sound familiar? Here's what actually happened. Sarah was stuck in what psychologists call the implementation intention trap. When we keep our goals completely to ourselves, we lose access to 3 critical success factors that research from NYU's Peter Gollwitzer has identified as essential for goal achievement. First, we lose accountability. Sarah had no external check-ins, no one asking, "How's the business plan coming along?" Without that gentle pressure, her consulting dream remained just that, a beautiful, private dream that never demanded action. Second, we lose feedback. Sarah's business idea was good, but it wasn't great. She needed someone to ask the hard questions. Who exactly is your target client? What problem are you solving that no one else is? Keeping quiet meant keeping those blind spots hidden. And third, we lose what researchers call social reality testing. Our goals exist in a bubble when we don't speak them. We never discover if they're realistic, if the timing is right, or if we're solving a problem that actually exists in the world. But here's where it gets interesting and where most advice about sharing goals goes wrong. The solution isn't to tell everyone everything. Sarah didn't need to post her business plan on social media or announce her dreams at every dinner party. What Sarah needed was strategic sharing, and that's exactly what the Strategic Sharing Framework teaches us to do. The framework has 4 stages, and I'm going to walk you through each one using Sarah's story as our guide. Stage 1, the foundation check. Before you share anything with anyone, you ask yourself 3 questions. First, do I have a clear, specific goal, or am I sharing excitement about an idea? Sarah realized she was excited about consulting, but she didn't have a specific business plan. That's important to recognize. Second, am I sharing to get validation or to get help? If you're sharing because you want people to tell you your idea is amazing, that's ego. If you're sharing because you need specific support, that's strategy. And third, is this person someone who can actually help me move forward? Not everyone in your life needs to hear about your goals. But some people, mentors, peers in your industry, accountability partners, those people can be invaluable. Sarah worked through these questions and realized she was in the excitement phase, not the execution phase. So stage 1 for her was about getting clear on her actual plan before she shared it with anyone. Stage 2, the inner circle test. This is where the magic happens. Sarah identified 3 people for her inner circle. Her business mentor, who had built a successful consulting practice, a fellow project manager who had made a similar transition, and her brother, who was naturally good at asking tough questions and would hold her accountable. Notice what Sarah didn't do. She didn't tell her well-meaning but risk-averse parents. She didn't share with coworkers who might feel threatened by her entrepreneurial goals. She chose people based on their ability to help her succeed, not their proximity to her heart. Each person in Sarah's inner circle had a specific role. The mentor provided strategic guidance. The peer offered practical insights and emotional support. Her brother kept her honest about her timeline and commitment level. Stage 3. The feedback loop. Here's where Sarah's story gets really interesting. Instead of just announcing her goal and hoping for the best, she created specific feedback moments. Monthly check-ins with her mentor, weekly progress updates with her accountability partner, quarterly reviews with her brother. But here's the crucial part: Sarah also had boundaries. Her inner circle knew about her 18-month plan to transition to consulting. But the day-to-day struggles, the moments of doubt, the small wins and setbacks, those stayed private until she'd processed them herself. She learned the difference between sharing for accountability and sharing for validation. Accountability sharing is, I committed to finishing my business plan by the end of this month. Can you check in with me next week? Validation sharing is, I had such a hard day at my current job. I can't wait to leave and start my own business. One moves you forward. The other keeps you stuck in complaining without action. Stage 4. The public integration. Only after Sarah had spent 6 months working with her inner circle, refining her plan, and building early momentum, did she begin sharing more publicly. But even then, it was strategic. She started with small steps, updating her LinkedIn profile to mention her consulting services, sharing one piece of valuable content related to her expertise each week, telling carefully chosen colleagues about her transition plan. By the time Sarah was ready to leave her job, she wasn't starting from zero. She had a network that knew about her expertise, early clients who were already interested in her services, and a reputation that preceded her. The whole process took 18 months. But here's what Sarah told me 6 months after she'd made the transition. I used to think that talking about my goals would make them less likely to happen. Now I realize that the right kind of sharing, with the right people, at the right time, that's what made everything possible. Now, you might be thinking, this sounds complicated. What about all those stories of people who achieved great things in secret, who surprised the world with their success? Those stories exist, and they're powerful. But research from Dr. Gail Matthews at Dominican University shows us something important. People who share their goals with a supportive accountability partner are 65% more likely to achieve them than people who keep them completely private. The key word there is supportive. Not everyone in your life is equipped to support your growth. Some people, unfortunately, will project their own fears onto your dreams. Others will offer advice that sounds helpful but actually derails your progress. This is why the strategic sharing framework isn't about sharing with everyone. It's about sharing strategically, with intention, with people who have the wisdom and motivation to help you succeed. But let's address the elephant in the room. What about those times when sharing does backfire? When someone crushes your enthusiasm or talks you out of taking action, that's usually a sign of two things. Either you shared with the wrong person or you shared at the wrong stage. If you're still in the excitement phase, if your goal is still more fantasy than plan, sharing can indeed deflate your motivation. Dr. Peter Gollwitzer's research on what he calls substitution shows that when we get social recognition for our intentions, our brain sometimes treats that recognition as if we've already achieved the goal. The dopamine hit from people saying, "That's amazing," can actually reduce our motivation to do the work. But this doesn't mean we should never share. It means we should share deliberately with people who will ask us about our progress, not just our dreams. I want to share one more story with you. This one hits closer to home. A few years ago, I had this idea for a podcast about psychology and personal growth. I was excited about it, had mapped out the first 10 episodes, even recorded a pilot. I made the classic mistake of sharing too early with the wrong people. I told friends, family, anyone who would listen. The responses were mixed. Some people were enthusiastic, but couldn't offer any real help. Others were skeptical and planted seeds of doubt I hadn't considered. Instead of getting energy and momentum from sharing, I felt deflated and confused. I ended up shelving the podcast for 8 months. Not because it was a bad idea, but because I'd contaminated it with too much input too early in the process. When I finally revisited the idea, I used what became the strategic sharing framework. I identified 2 people, a friend who had successfully launched a podcast, and a mentor who understood my goals for the project. I shared with just them, got specific feedback, and used their input to refine the concept. 6 months later, I launched the show. It wasn't perfect, but it was coherent and focused in ways my original idea hadn't been. The difference wasn't the idea itself. It was the quality of the sharing process. Here's what I want you to remember. The goal isn't to become a person who never shares anything. That's isolation, not strategy. The goal is to become someone who shares with intention, who chooses your inner circle carefully, and who uses other people's insights to make your goals stronger, not weaker. So let's get practical. If you have a goal you've been keeping completely secret, here are 3 questions to help you apply the strategic sharing framework. First, what stage am I really in? Am I excited about an idea, or do I have a clear plan? If you're still in the idea phase, spend more time clarifying your vision before you share it. If you have a plan, you're ready to find your inner circle. Second, who in my life has successfully done something similar? This isn't about finding people who will automatically say yes to everything you suggest. It's about finding people who have relevant experience and good judgment. And third, what kind of help do I actually need? Accountability? Strategic advice? Emotional support? Different people in your inner circle will provide different types of support. Be clear about what you need so you can ask for it directly. One final thought before we wrap up. The strategic sharing framework isn't just about achieving your goals. It's about building the kind of relationships where people support each other's growth, where you can be honest about your struggles and celebrate your wins without feeling like you're bragging or burdening anyone. Sarah told me something beautiful 6 months into her consulting business. She said, "I used to think I had to choose between being private and being vulnerable. Now I realize I can be both. I can share what matters with people who matter and keep the rest to myself." That balance, that's what we're aiming for. Not the cold silence of keeping everything to yourself, and not the scattered energy of sharing everything with everyone. Strategic sharing, intentional community, support that actually supports. Your goals deserve more than secrecy, and they deserve more than careless broadcasting. They deserve the kind of thoughtful, strategic sharing that helps them grow stronger. I'm curious about your experience with this. Have you ever shared a goal and regretted it? Have you ever kept something to yourself when you could have used support? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every one, and your insights often become the inspiration for future episodes. For more resources on building accountability partnerships and creating your support network, check the description below. You'll find links to some of the research I mentioned today, plus a simple worksheet to help you identify your own inner circle. Remember, you're not broken, you're becoming. And sometimes, the right kind of sharing with the right people, at the right time, is exactly what helps you become who you're meant to be. Thanks for spending this time with me at Audiobook Labs. Come as you are, leave with something deeper.